Meta just had an insane event showcasing all of the VR and AR technology that they've been working on for years now. And I'm a certified VR nerd. I know this isn't normally what we talk about on the channel, but we have a reason. You'd be surprised how much of the stuff that you just saw was powered by React. And the way they got there is actually really cool. Generally speaking, React powers a lot of things you probably don't know about. Everything from Xbox and PlayStation to random embedded UIs to full-on UIs in games themselves. When we get into these crazy 3D spaces, you'd assume that you'd throw out React for 3D tools. But that's not the case at all. And even though I can't talk about the PlayStation thing, and believe me, I really, really want to, I can't. But I can talk about this stuff because Meta just put out a blog post all about how React was actually the technology powering these things. I'm lucky enough to have been talking with the team about these things forever now, and getting to share it all with you guys is super, super exciting. Do you know what else I want to share with you guys, though? Quick word from today's sponsor. Let's talk about Next. I have so much to...
Now.
What is this? I just doubled your MRR. Real money talk. Micro front end now. Okay, real talk. Micro front ends are basically necessary for big companies. If you're watching these videos, but you're stuck on an ancient code base at work, micro front ends are the most realistic way to modernize your stack and ship faster. Imagine every team picking the tools they actually like. Imagine rolling back individual components in your UI, even in React Native. Imagine testing and hot swapping in production. Imagine shipping on Fridays with no fear. What you're imagining is Zephyr. Zephyr is the cloud-agnostic platform built for module federation and micro front ends. And they're not just a hosting platform. If your company needs help modernizing their stack, hit that contact button. They're not scared to get their hands dirty. Thank you, Zephyr Cloud, for sponsoring this episode. Check them out at zephyrcloud.io. Let's dive in. I'm actually really hyped for this because there's also probably things in here I don't know about yet. Every time one of these things drops, there's a bunch I knew and a bunch I didn't. So let's dive in. React at Meta Connect 2024. At Meta, React and React Native are more than just tools. They are an integral part of our product development and innovation. With over 5,000 people at Meta building products and experiences with React every month, these technologies are fundamental to our engineering culture and our availability to quickly build and ship high-quality products. In this post, we dive into the development experience of the products teams who've leveraged React and React Native to deliver excellent projects showcased at Meta Connect 2024. I almost want to go on a quick tangent about React Native. Most people, when they think of React and you see a React component, you have something like function, component, return, div, hello, div. When you see this in React, I think it's fair to say that this looks like React is very closely tied to the browser. But there's an important detail most people don't think about every day. Div here, that doesn't come from the React package, nor does it come from the browser. There's a secret package that React works alongside that almost every React web code base uses. That package, React DOM. This is the package that is most of how we use React today. And when you're writing elements that are in the browser, and then React is taking your JSX code and your React code and rendering it to the browser, React DOM is the package that is actually taking your React components and attaching them to the browser and putting them in your web page. But since these are separate packages, you don't have to use React DOM. When you use React Native, this code looks a little different. So if I write this properly, it's not React, it's actually GNU plus, it's React plus React DOM. But React plus React Native is a bit different because React Native doesn't have divs because it's native. You don't have a div on mobile. You only have divs in the browser. So instead, you have views, or in this case, text, because there's text on it. So from React Native, you'd actually have to import things too, to be clear. So import text from React Native. This is both the thing that feels weird about React Native as a React dev, but it's also one of the biggest strengths of React and why it's able to do stuff like this. Because you can do the same thing with something like React 3 Fiber, where you can have React plus React 3 Fiber, which is again an alternative to React DOM, where I can import box from React 3 Fiber. And now I can have a 3D box element or a shader or all the other things you might do in a 3D environment, all being imported from React 3 Fiber. The difference is when you use React DOM, your bundler just allows you to access all the different things. But technically speaking, what you should do here, and what it's doing under the hood for you, is import div from React DOM. Hopefully this helps make it clear both what React Native is and why React is uniquely cool for these types of things, because every other framework doesn't separate this DOM piece, the actual elements you're rendering, from the core framework itself. And a lot of things like the attempts to have solid native or svelte native or Vue native, they end up either just embedding the browser or they take advantage of the bindings that React already wrote with React Native and translate the calls those other frameworks are making to bind it into the native platforms using these layers that were already made. Apparently, Angular and Solid have started moving in that direction, but the ties are much deeper overall. The other cool thing with this is that React Native isn't one implementation. The same way like React 3 Fiber, this box always resolves the same way. In React DOM, div always resolves the same way. React Native is a generic shim that you write bindings for all of these different places. So when you write a text component or a view component in React Native, it can do different things on mobile. It can do different things on iOS and Android. It can do different things on Windows. It can do different things in where we're going, VR. Apparently, I'm just entirely wrong about Solid. I'm good to know. Lessons learned. Had no idea. Thank you for the clarification. The reason I wanted to make those clarifications is because React Native allows you to use the mental model and the way you write components, the hooks and other packages you've already written. And now React Native, as long as you write the right bindings for it for another platform, the same way that you almost, like with the Java virtual machine, once you port the VM, all those apps work. Once you port React Native to a specific platform, a lot of those apps you've written in React Native just work. Some of the apps that got announced are Instagram and Facebook for MetaQuest. At Connect, Zuckerberg shared that we have rebuilt Instagram and Facebook for mixed reality on the MetaQuest. Our goal was to bring our flagship social experiences to the MetaQuest headset, letting people catch up with their friends and watch stories and reels, all while showcasing new possibilities enabled only through mixed reality. And these aren't the first apps that built with React Native for the Quest, by the way. The whole store is built with React Native. I believe most of the menus are built with React Native. They heavily use React Native on Quest, which I think is really cool. Building Meta social apps from scratch in mixed reality required our teams to thoughtfully leverage the platform's capabilities offered by MetaQuest while keeping a tremendously high bar for quality. The teams first had to decide how to build them, reusing the existing Android apps, writing a new native Android app, or use React Native to build from scratch. We wanted to offer a hero experience that looked and felt at home on MetaQuest, taking advantage of the additional input types, gestures, and large visual surface area. This is another important detail. People seem to think that the benefit of React Native is you can write the code once and it works everywhere. That can be the case, but realistically speaking, every platform is kind of different. And the benefit isn't just that the code can be written once and work everywhere. It's that the reusable parts that should exist in multiple places can, but you don't have to reform your mental model when you're building for these different platforms. And if you want to build a different app for iOS and Android, using React Native is still beneficial because you can reuse so much of the parts. And most importantly, you can reuse your brain, not have to retrain it between platforms. So while yes, they had to make a new app for mixed reality, because mixed reality is very different from building an iPhone app, they could reuse a lot of the parts and logic, and most importantly, they didn't have to relearn how to build. They just had to learn the differences in what makes a good app for the platform, not how to make an app for the platform. And this kind of sucks when you're trying to build your first mobile app, because if you're a React dev and you go to build an app with Swift, you have to learn Swift before you can learn how to build a good mobile app. With React Native, you can just start building the app and learn what makes an app good instead. It's less things to learn, which is a really powerful benefit. Instead of simply porting our mobile social apps, we chose React Native as it enabled our teams to iterate and build quickly with robust animation capabilities, great performance, and a shared platform that powers most of the 2D MetaQuest system apps. Love they call this out directly because I don't have to hide that I know this now. Most of the MetaQuest system apps are built with React Native, which is awesome. On Instagram, React Native enabled our teams to build rich animations and novel interactions that embody the brand's deep focus on quality and delight. For this new app, we introduced seamless transitions of video posts from feed to a full screen view side by side with comments without dropping a single frame. We enabled the ability to swipe through stacks of photos with the controller joystick or pinching your hands. We also introduced a unique hover animation over interactive elements that smoothly follows your controller movements. Hover animations and focus is one of the hardest things when building something like React Native because you don't have all the browser primitives for these things. And it's actually funny when like animations are so hard on web and they're so easy in React Native because so much effort was put in and the browser isn't holding you back the same way. People are already saying in chat, animations are so easy in React Native and so hard on web. Absolutely agree. When building Facebook for MetaQuest, our teams took advantage of the mature code and infrastructure that supports our Facebook.com desktop experience. We leverage code sharing technologies to reuse some of the most complex and robust features from the Facebook site, like newsfeed and commenting. How cool is it they could reuse the code from the website for the newsfeed and for comments, but just build new components for them effectively? That's awesome. And that's what's so powerful with React Native. It's not that the thing you return in the components is the same, it's everything else can be the same. Some of these code sharing technologies include our meta open source projects like StyleX and React Strict DOM. Huge shout out to StyleX, by the way. Naman just carried us through a web component video. Dude knows his shit. And React Strict DOM I've talked about a little bit. The goal of React Strict DOM is to have a subset of DOM elements that bind directly to specific native elements so that you can have one API that compiles natively to React DOM as well as to whatever React Native bindings you want to do. So it would be one layer that works everywhere. It's a really cool idea. Really, really early, but it's a dope idea, and it's cool they're already consuming it for this. By sharing code, our teams could spend less time on repetitive business logic and focus more on adding MetaQuest-specific interactions and experiences. This is a piece I think people miss so much with React Native. They assume that React Native means everything is going to be worse quality. I find it's often the opposite. By reducing how much effort has to be spent building the application, and on top of that, allowing for the few people who know the platform really well to build reusable primitives for the things that make the platform special, the time you save and the reusability you gain from a tool like React Native often results in the app being better. Obviously, when we're talking about a perfect application, it is optimized at such a crazy level that is using the platform to its 100% capabilities. But realistically, no app is perfect. And if you take two teams of the same size with the same time frame, React Native allows for the specialized people in that group to build the best native stuff and expose it to everyone else much more efficiently. And with the right team size and composition, React Native allows you to build a much better experience simply because of those benefits. So I don't agree with this belief that for an app to be good, it has to be native. Meta's bet their whole platform on React Native here, and it seems to be going very well for them. I will say personally, somebody who uses both a Quest 3 and the Vision Pro, the Vision Pro is a lot quirkier. The Quest 3 is at least consistent with the weird ways it behaves. The Vision Pro, I had a bug a few days ago where I couldn't open up the app picker. I would do the new gesture for it, and it just wouldn't open. I had to reboot the headset to get access to the home app view. It's insane. And those types of bugs can happen in any code base. But when you have to be so close to the native platform, those things get harder to debug. And when you fix them, it's still broken in 15 places. When you have these abstractions, getting them right is a lot more consistent. Anyways, Meta Horizon mobile app. This year, we also rolled out the new Meta Horizon app, a new look and a new name. No offense, I don't care about the avatars and the mobile app. To continue to improve app performance, our teams typically look at the Facebook Marketplace as a React Native performance benchmark. I do love this. I talked about this at ReactConf. They've been using the React Native Facebook and specifically Quest apps to test the compiler and other things they're doing. Oh, if I recall, they're using static Hermes for some of this now too, which is really cool. They're compiling this to C code. Well, actually assembly code directly. However, the Meta Horizon app is a standalone app with React Native in the initialization path of the app's cold start, compared to the Facebook app, which initializes React Native when you visit your first React Native surface and not an app start. Performance results our team delivered with React Native exceeded our original expectations and are on par with Meta's mobile social apps. That's nuts. Apparently, in Facebook, since React Native isn't always running, it only runs when you go to a part of the app that's React Native. This is really cool that React Native is performing better than they thought, because when you start it up immediately, everything flies. Makov confirmed that a lot of the stuff built for React Native for Quest is absolutely using static Hermes. Well, not absolutely. Apparently, because of the S and ends with Hermes. So theoretically, some wiggle room. No, he confirmed it here. That's really cool stuff. If you're not familiar with static Hermes, definitely watch my video on that. It's a crazy project, but the goal is to allow you to compile your JS code to the native instructions that most minimally represent the thing it's supposed to do to let you get code as fast as C in JavaScript. It's insane. Also probably part of why these apps are performing so well. The Horizon team worked closely with our React team to profile our application and find opportunities for improvements using the Android systrace, React DevTools, and the new React Native DevTools. Really cool React Native DevTools are being used here. Huge ship. The debugging experience in React Native was bad enough that it alone was if people picked Flutter over React Native because of the debugging experience, I could sympathize some amount. But React Native is catching up here for sure. But also, if you're curious why Android, the Quest runs Android still. It's a fork. It's a heavy fork at this point, but the Quest OS is a fork of Android. You can also still run APKs, which is fun too. The most impactful improvement that our teams made was initiating network queries earlier. And this is why the whole server components thing is being pushed so hard. It has consistently been found again and again that the technology you built the app with does not affect performance as much as when your network requests happen. And if you can make all of the network requests correctly as early as possible, it makes life significantly better. It makes your performance way, way, way better. Instead of initiating network requests when a component on the product surface was rendered, our teams moved the network fetch to start when the navigation button from the previous surface was clicked. And again, this is why they're doing server components, because they want to brute force us to trigger all of our requests as soon as the page or the view is loaded, not when a component specifically is rendered. This is the whole render as you fetch versus fetch on render thing I did a video on. The Meta Horizon Store. We also announced that the Horizon Store is open for all devs to publish apps, including 2D apps. To support the change, we made major changes to the Horizon Store, changes to our navigation to support a significant larger set of categories, better ranking and categorization of apps, and a new early access section. Cool. More about what they're doing with it here, but the cool part for React Native stuff, the team has benefited tremendously from being able to use React and React Native, even though these are primarily separate implementations today. These technologies have enabled the team to roll out new features and experiments much faster with a smaller team. Huge. And when you're doing something as experimental as their efforts in VR, bigger teams are going to slow you down so much. So giving the smaller teams more flexibility lets you build the right thing much faster. Just like the new Instagram and Facebook apps and everything else using React at Meta, our teams use the bleeding edge of React Infra, like the React compiler and the new React Native architecture. Huge. They're not making the compiler and then not using it. Everything using React at Facebook and at Meta is trying to use the React compiler, which is huge. The React team partnered with multiple teams over the last few years to build out infra and capabilities to enable cross-platform code sharing, which the Meta Horizon Store team has started to take advantage of. For example, the Meta Horizon Store's navigation and routing infra was originally quite different between platforms. The team is now reusing Meta's internal router for React apps that was originally built for Facebook.com, which now also works with React Native. That's cool. They have a custom router package that works on all their platforms now. Actually really interesting. They also converted the Meta Horizon Store on the web from using pure CSS to StyleX, which in combination with the strict DOM has enabled them to reuse the Spotlight section of the Meta Horizon Store across web and mixed reality. That's really cool. They have an actual set of components for the Horizon Spotlight section that is the exact same across platforms. So they're testing the different types of reusability here too. They're dogfooding everything. That is dope. So they enable us to more quickly support internationalized text rendering and light and dark modes for banners, and accelerated future enhancements for our merchandising teams. The Spatial editor. I want to see this. Ooh, this is actually really cool. We announced the Meta Spatial SDK and the Spatial editor to enable mobile devs to create immersive experiences for Meta Horizon OS using familiar Android languages, libraries, and tools, along with unique MetaQuest capabilities like physics, MR, and 3D. Creating great 3D experiences always requires being able to visualize and edit your scenes directly. The Meta Spatial Editor is a new desktop app that lets you import, organize, and transform your assets into visual compositions and export them using the GLTF, or I think it's GLTF standard. Yeah, you can use the GLTF standard into the Meta Spatial SDK. Apparently, that app was built with React Native for desktop. That's really cool. React Native for desktop is React Native for Windows and Mac, largely being built by Microsoft, believe it or not, because they finally accepted that the Windows SDK was garbage enough. They needed something better. And React Native is now used inside of Windows directly. If you're using Windows 11, there are things in it that are React Native, including the start menu, which is nuts. One of the key factors in the team's decision to use React Native for desktop instead of other web-based desktop solutions is that React Native enables the team to use native integrations when needed. The main 3D scene in the app is powered by a custom 3D rendering engine, requiring a custom React Native component integration. The React Native panels on the scene let users modify all sorts of properties, which then communicate with the 3D renderer via C++, enabling us to update the UI at 60 FPS. That's really, really cool. The Spatial Editor team has many engineers who primarily had a C++ background and were used to building with Qt. These team members were initially skeptical of JS, but ended up loving the developer experience provided by React Native, such as fast refresh. You forget how nice it is having hot reloading and fast refreshing until you go back to things that don't, and it's miserable to save your code, go to the thing, realize it's not running, recompile and run, and then see the changes. Fast refresh doesn't even break your state. So if you change the way a thing looks and you've clicked the button 4 times, it still has the count. It's so good. Web devs take for granted that code changes can be seen on file save, but it's still extremely uncommon for native engineers. Yep, pre-read. Developer experience enabled our teams to build much more quickly with React Native. This is how Meta builds React. Over a decade ago, Meta introduced React to the industry through open source. Our React team at Meta is so proud of these experiences that were announced at Meta Connect 2024. These products showcase the power, expressivity, and flexibility of what's possible with React. Delightful interactions, deeply complex integrations, and incredibly responsive interfaces. And of course, they all render natively to their respective platforms to match user expectations. Over the past decade, the React team has partnered deeply with both teams at Meta as well as members of the open source community to enable these types of product and developer experiences. Engineers at Meta use React on every platform where we ship user interfaces, web, mobile, desktop, and new platforms like MR. Each time the React team has added support for a new platform, the team has invested in deeply understanding the idioms and expectations for user experiences on that platform, then adapting and optimizing React accordingly. We've consistently found that improving React for one platform benefits others as well, an approach that the React team describes in their many platform vision. Cool example of this they brought up at ReactConf. React team didn't think much about memory usage before MetaQuest, because at the time, there were really strict memory restrictions around how much memory a given application or view could use in a 2D app on Quest. So they had to make React run with way less memory than it used to expect, especially for React Native. And they did it. And it made React better everywhere. Just one example I can think of, but there's, I'm sure, plenty more. The pattern continued as the teams expanded support to the constraints and opportunities of MR devices. Our team has improved startup and application responsiveness, improved efficiency to reduce battery drain, and taken major steps to enable code sharing across web and native platforms, with platform-specific customizations. These wins have consistently benefited our apps on other platforms, with user experience improvements in products like Facebook.com and specifically the Facebook Marketplace, which is almost entirely built with React Native. Our engineers invest in these improvements in knowing that they will benefit not only products created by Meta, but all React products in the world. Meta continues to share these improvements with the open source community whenever we have built our confidence that they are stable enough for broader adoption. We previously shared some of these improvements with the open source community, like the React compiler, React 19, React Native's new architecture, StyleX, Strict DOM, and other performance improvements that are coming to Hermes. These innovations and more are currently under development. Our teams look forward to sharing them with the open source community in the future. That was even cooler than I expected. I am hyped. Let me know what you guys think, and until next time, peace nerds.